Welcome to another episode of Hi, I'm Doctor. And today's I think it's going to be an awesome episode. We have Dr. Paresh Shah from Winnipeg, Manitoba. And I've been following Paresh for years on Instagram. And honestly, he's my daily motivation. Every day I see either like a post from Adam Grant or Simon Sinek, and he just kind of grounds me. So I just go to Paresh's Instagram feed and find out what I need to better myself today. But he's an amazing clinician, and I want you all to meet him. And personally, I haven't met him in real life, so it's a huge honor for me to welcome you to the podcast, Paresh. Thank you so much for
Oh,
coming on.
thanks, Nikki. Thanks, Akil. It's really, yeah, I'm honored to be here, and I'm privileged to meet both of you. I've seen a lot of what you've been doing on social media, and I've heard a lot of great things about you through common friends. And I think yeah, just keep doing what you're doing because it's good for dentistry, and it's also good for Canadian dentistry. You know, we just don't have enough of that here.
I I totally agree, and I just you've kind of led the path. You've taught a lot with the Seattle Study Club, and I want to get into that too. But before we
Yeah.
dive in, I want to learn about you. Like where did you grow up? Where did you go to dental school? And I know you practice in Winnipeg now, so
Yeah.
just give us a little synopsis here.
Okay, I was born in India, but we moved when I was like 3 years old. My parents are still here; they're alive, and my dad's a retired physician, and so I've done all my schooling here. I didn't want to be a dentist. I started, and I wanted to do medical research, so I did a master's in physiology, and actually it was molecular biology, and I I was doing my master's. Was married for about a year and a half at that time, and my wife is in corporate finance. She's a CA and a chartered business valuator. And so at that time, she and my dad sit me down. I'm in my mid 20s. I'm like, I don't know, maybe 24, not even 25. And they have an intervention and they say, you don't need to do a PhD. You should be a dentist. And I go to my dad, well, you're a doctor. Why not? He's like, no, you don't want to be a doctor. And they actually filled out my dental school application. No word of a lie. They filled it out. I got in, uh, and after 6 months, I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and now obviously I really love it. But that's how I got into dentistry. So I did, I did all my schooling at the U of M, and yeah, here I am now.
Oh man,
Wow,
a lot of pre-meds are gonna hate you saying that you just filled the application and got in.
Oh man, it was yeah, I don't know. It was just one of those well, I mean I had a lot of science background up until that. I did a BSc and then a master's and all this other stuff, but no, it's been an interesting journey and I started a little late in dentistry, but I'm almost 31 years, 32 years in now in this July. So, yeah,
wow, like you must have seen this profession change so much over the last 3 decades,
for
and
sure.
um and can you tell us about that? Like what was dentistry like 30 years ago versus
Yeah,
now?
you know what? It was interesting. Like I got to tell you, it's I think what's changed for me is just um, there are just so many more materials, techniques, and procedures that are available, and yet I still also realize that some of the stuff that was taught, about occlusion and about certain materials and prep designs back when I was in school, and now I see the value of some of it, and I see the benefits of why we did things a certain way. I would when I first got out, it'd be like, why do you want to do a gold onlay? Now, when I see patients who, either I've done it or someone else has done it like 20 and 30 years ago and it looks pristine, it's like, okay, well, there's something there. And that kind of translates into now as we're doing more maybe conservative, minimally invasive additive dentistry. Well, that stuff was already being done. It was just being done with gold. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I think the biggest thing are all the materials, and it's getting overwhelming because I've gone through stages where I've tried certain materials, and then all of a sudden you realize, well, hey, we're actually testing some of this stuff for the companies. And then all of a sudden you look and you go, well, why is it not working? Maybe it wasn't the best material and then the material's off the market. So then you start realizing, okay, we got to be careful. And, and so that's been an interesting change, is just making sure that whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to be as critically evaluating everything, having as much evidence-based dentistry. I know everyone uses that phrase, but I certainly do practice it because I've learned a lot of it from doing my master's, and the doctor that I worked under. It was very important to read literature. But that's been a big part. So I think my dentistry has become more conservative and tooth conserving over the years, just because I know more and I know better. And I've had some amazing mentors to teach me stuff like that. So that's how it's evolved.
I just find it so interesting that, like, you know, I feel like you're everyone's mentor now. Like, who do you look up to? Like, who's
Oh man,
helping the mentor out?
I got to tell you, like, I've got so many. So, like, I've got a handful of really big, like, people, not big, but people who I really look up to. So, from a pros point of view, obviously, John Coyce, Frank Spear. I've done all of Coyce. I've done a reasonable amount of Spear, not as much, but I've done all of Coyce. John's been a huge influence to me. There was a restorative guy who was one of my biggest mentors. He passed away 5 years ago, Paul Belvedere, in 2017, from the University of Minnesota. But Paul taught me everything about adhesion, like all the basic stuff about adhesion that I still follow to this day. And he's influenced me. And there were two prosthodontists that ran a post-grad aesthetic program at the University of Minnesota in Buffalo, Fred McIntyre and Paul Aline, who are at the tail ends of their careers, but they still influence me in terms of restorative. And then I've had three amazing orthodontists. That one passed away, Vince Kokich, but Rick Robley and David Sarber, who are huge in the orthodontic community, but they're friends and mentors, and I've had them up to our study club. But they've taught me about facial aesthetics and just so many things about comprehensive dentistry. So those are all mentors of mine. I did courses with Carl Misch when he was alive, so he taught me a lot about, restoring implants, because I don't place them anymore. And yeah, Jerry Sheesh, who's a prosthodontist, big influence for me right now. I mean, and the fortunate is I know him well enough that I can call him and say, ask for help and guidance. And he's very candid, if not on the right track. So it's been pretty good. And then I've got a few perio mentors as well. So I've learned a lot about different things. I don't do everything, but I understand and have a good idea. So those are people. Then I have some younger ones. Like, truthfully, I had, our friend Sonny, who's here, a young kid. I just love his energy. And we got an endodontist here as well, and a couple of other people who, just some younger dentists, inspire me. One of my really good friends is Brian Bollywas at SF Dental Nerve. Like, Brian and I, we text all the time, and I know him really well because I met him when our daughter was going to dental school at University of Pacific, and we've had a really close friendship. But we talk about dentistry, we talk about life, about business, marketing, and I learn stuff from him. And I reach out and I go, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And he's like, "Well, why are you asking me?" Like, and I go, "No, like, I
You're the
want to know
guy.
why." And so, yeah, I have a little bit of everything. I think a lot of you younger dentists don't diminish the impact you can have on some of us to still be inspired and want to level up and keep changing and growing. And so a lot of you have influenced me to go, "Hey, I think I want to try something a little different, but let's do it methodically, but maybe get out of my comfort zone." And I'm doing that in my practice still after 31 and a half years.
So from
Kill,
going,
I can, like, we were just talking about this, how, like, you keep the friends you have are basically who you are. And I feel like I'm on an island living, alone in Lloydminster, Alberta. And, like, I don't have that huge community around me. And Akil and I were just talking about that
Yeah,
mentorship. Like, Akil,
right.
who, like, what were you saying about finding good mentors?
well, you're just the product of the people you
Yeah.
surround yourself with. It's like that, like 33, 33, 33 rule, right? Like 33% of
Right.
people should be, a couple steps beneath you. 33% of people should be about at your level. And then, the last third should just be above you. And you should have a good mix of those. But it's just interesting hearing from the story of you getting your dad to fill out your application to now I see the passion you have for dentistry.
Yeah.
And on your website, it shows that you've had over 4,000 hours of CE and advanced education, all this stuff. And it shows that you're passionate about it. So where did that spark kind of light?
So here's, I'm about 7.5, 8 years out, and I'm not enjoying dentistry. It was just drill and fill. And with all due respect to, um, some of my really close friends who are, there are certain part of the community that I was involved with here that was just basically the same. We're all working to retire. It's a job, right? And I just wasn't enjoying it. I was about 4 years into having my practice, my own practice, and there's things I just didn't know. I'd look and I go, I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. And then all of a sudden, I got directed to this group at the University of Minnesota, and it was called the Postgrad Aesthetic Program in Aesthetic, which I actually have it's 500 hours of CE. It took me like 3 or 4 years to do, and I have an actual post a certificate from the University of Buffalo in aesthetic dentistry, and but I go there the first weekend, and the first module, like part one, was 1 year. It was 4 weekends, 120 hours, and there's all didactic and tabletop. It wasn't any patient treatment. The second year was all patient treatment. But I go there and I meet all these people, and I met a group of dentists: Steve and Mike Flynn, Mike Spencer, um, Paul Olean, Fred McIntyre, Paul Belvedere, and all these guys. And I'm in my early to mid 30s, and they're all late 40s. And I see the passion in them. And I see them love dentistry and learning new procedures and enjoying their families and their kids and drinking a beer after the clinic and doing all that stuff. And I'm like, holy crap, you can have it all. You can love what you're doing, and I think part of it is just what you said, Akil. It's meeting a group of people that are like-minded. They have an infectious personality and they're inspiring. And I all of a sudden met these people and my life changed overnight. I'm still connected with them. They're retired. They're in their mid 70s, and we're planning to try and go on a fishing trip. I hate fishing, but I like hanging out with them. So I would spend a whole weekend just hanging out with them and talking about stories. And that's what happened. I got inspired, and then I had my buddy Ken from here start coming with me. Next thing you know, I've got a buddy to go through Mish with me, go through all of the Minnesota courses with me, Buffalo courses, then Coyce. And we're buddies that do it together now and go do all of our CE together. And yeah, that's how it changed. And it's exactly what both of you are saying. You feel isolated, you feel in an island. And I don't think you have to have a mentor only in your own town. I think it's important to have some, but I think it's important to have some in other cities or countries so you get a little bit of a different perspective. And I think it's also important to have mentors, different age groups as well.
I couldn't agree more. Like I don't know. Like I'm 14 years out now. I feel like, if I was going to do it all over again, I would have made a lot of changes earlier on. You're 30 years out. What would you have done differently? Like we all look up to you now, but what would you have done differently when you were, starting out in dentistry and looking on which avenues you wanted to go down?
Oh man. Um, you know what? If I knew what I knew right now, I'd probably do periopros. I'd probably do both. I just, I know it's kind of weird, but it's just, I mean, I love the restorative, but I also understand a lot of the other stuff, and I would probably do a specialty. I didn't do it. I almost did oral surgery because I did a GPR here in Winnipeg, and I loved it. And then I had an opportunity to apply, but we just had Serena, our daughter, and my wife has been patient, allowing me to supporting me to do like 13 years of post grad already. And she's
Yeah.
like, you want to do it, go for it. And I'm like, no, I think let's get started. And
Yeah.
but yeah, if I did it differently, I'd probably do that. Um, I've been practicing on my own all these years. I've had part-time associates a lot over the years. I'm feeling a little isolated. I wish I had someone, but I've set my practice up in the way I practice in such a way that it's hard to find someone who really wants to practice the way I do. And the handful that do, they're so motivated to have their own place that that's been a bit of a challenge. But if I had to do it, and I tried this for so many years, talking to different people, I wanted an interdisciplinary clinic years ago in Winnipeg. I had approached different specialists. Let's set up a clinic. Let's have a whole group of us and practice together. And pretty well every specialist was hesitant to have a practice with a general practitioner, always worrying, oh, where I'm going to lose. And I go, you're not going to lose people. Like, your referrals aren't going to lose people. If they lose people, it's because they're doing something wrong. They're not connecting with their patients. Because why would someone leave if they're happy? Why would they leave your practice? But no one
You
gets
got something
that.
to say
Now
about
they
that?
do. You go to Toronto, you go to Vancouver, you go to LA, you go to Chicago, you go to London. There are interdisciplinary clinics.
Right. Do you think
But
it's because it's it's Canada, it's Winnipeg? Like, do you think that has anything
I
to do
think
with it?
yeah, absolutely. I think it's because it's still a fear living in some of the smaller communities. Toronto's different.
Yeah.
Toronto is not Winnipeg from this end. Listen, I'm not a Leafs fan. I'm sorry, man. I'm a Winnipeg Jets. But the bottom line is, Toronto's a major North American city, right?
Yeah.
And so it has a lot of flavors that Los Angeles and Chicago and Dallas have, and that. And so with that, in order, in any business, you're going to see people that are going to be on that cutting edge. And so when you go to Toronto, you're going to have clinics that are going to have, you know, plastic surgeons and dermatologists working with dentists. Try and bring someone here. I've tried that for years and no one wants to.
Yeah. But
Now,
that's like
10 years.
your teaching partner, Dr. Chi in Calgary.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he's working with plastic surgeons, isn't he?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. Well, he does all of it, but the thing is, like, no one's in the same clinic with him, right?
that's right.
But you go to Toronto, you go to London, you go to New York, you'll find all that. So I would love to do that because I have a periodontist that comes in the office. When she's there those 2 days, man, I'm walking in there and she's saying, "Is this exactly where you want this? What do you think of that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, can you move it here?" She did some aesthetic crown lengthening for me like 2 weeks ago, and so I'm sitting there and I canceled 2 patients and I just sat there, took pictures. I go, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And this is the length. And I'm taking a perio probe. The length of my tooth is going to be this. So can you give me an extra millimeter here? I mean, that jacks me up.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think that's, part of your premise for, I don't know if this is the first time we're going to be talking about it, but, your new textbook.
Oh man, you know
Come
what?
on, man. I'm going to make you talk about it.
Yeah, no, I'm super happy about that. Okay, so I have written a textbook. It started 2.5 years ago, and it got released yesterday. Um,
Okay, come
and
on. That's amazing. Let's
It
you can
is,
you can't
and
just
you
you
know
can't
what?
just play that down, man. That's 2.5 years of your
Okay,
life.
yeah, it is. So the publisher is Edra Publishing, and there's an Italian company, but they've got a U.S. branch, and they've got some pretty cool. So a few of my friends have published books with them, including there's Elaine Halley in Scotland, Ireland, like in the UK, and well, if I got it wrong, she's going to get so upset with me. In
Oh no,
in
we got
no
to take a step
no
back here.
Elaine,
Do
yeah.
you just sit at your computer one day and you're like, I'm going to write a textbook, and you just
No,
open up a Word document? Like, how do you
it
do?
was so hard. So I was asked, "Hey, there's an opportunity from the publisher to write a book," and the book was on interdisciplinary care, comprehensive dentistry, and that's just up my alley. My soapbox is for a number of years has been interdisciplinary dentistry, and I've been lecturing for probably 18, 19 years, and it started with just everyday dentistry and composites, whatever you want to call it, and restorative and materials and all that stuff. And then slowly I just started there's a lot of people that do that kind of stuff, and they're very, very good at it. And some of them are even better than I am at doing some of the work. And I thought, the things that float my boat are digital dentistry and digital workflows and comprehensive interdisciplinary care. And so it gave me an opportunity to look back at what I've done over the last 20 plus years, and how my dentistry has evolved and how my approach to dentistry has evolved from doing just fixing teeth to now I still fix teeth and I still make most of my money just fixing teeth, doing restorative. But almost every case that's an adult, I'm always looking at other things. I'm looking at soft tissue. I'm looking at the periodontal. I'm looking at tooth alignment. I'm looking at facial aesthetics. And even though someone may not be interested, I'm mentioning, is any of this important to you? Because it's part of my my routine. I'll use the word Rolodex for my age, but it's part of my
I know what
index
that is.
cards and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You've heard it about it somewhere from your
I've never
parents.
seen one, but I know what that is.
So, yeah, but and so, yeah, and so when that came up, I'm like, okay, but how do I do it? Then I'm sitting and I'm starting to write a chapter. Like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And it just evolved. But it took me a little over a year to write. It took about another year for all these editing and everything, and then a bunch of months for other things. So it's official. I haven't really made any announcements on social media, but I'll do that over the next week or so. And,
Heard it first here.
Come on, we get to be the first one to pump you up. Congratulations, that's
Thanks.
amazing, man.
Thanks.
I'm blown away, man. Beyond Single Tooth Dentistry, get it at your favorite bookstore. I don't know where do you get this?
No, it's going to be initially it's going to be just right now through Edra Publishing, which I can get you. I can send you a link or something on that.
Yeah.
But through my Instagram, I'll have a link, and then probably by next week it'll be available on Amazon.
When I think
Wow.
of when I think of the pinnacle of education, I usually think of publishing a book. I wonder, when you were writing it, obviously of many thousands of hours of CE, did you ever have like a moment of imposter syndrome where you're like, what if this goes wrong? Like, what if someone who contradicts me sees this? And
I have it about right now. Absolutely. I know. And you know what? Some of the people that I had review it, and one of them is a very, very close friend of mine who's a prosthodontist buddy. And we had a long chat about it, because it's not, I haven't written it from a very high end, Jerry Sheesh, Pascal Magnier type. There's literature and there's everything to support all of it, but it's not about that. It's not about, hey, this procedure, and if you're, opening vertical, this is what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. Although there is a case on that in there. But it's more about to try and stimulate thought for dentists, about looking at not just focusing on teeth and restorative, like just stimulating the brain to go, maybe I should think about some other disciplines. Whether I'm the super dentist wanting to do the work, like the ortho and the perio or the implants or not, but just thinking about other ways that possibly the outcome for the patient is going to be even better than just by doing it restorative wise. And that's what I'm looking. And then, so the book is laid out in such a way that it's like, okay, what records do you want to do a comprehensive exam? Why do you want those records? Why do you want photographs? Why do you want certain imaging? Why do you want diagnostic casts or, scans? Why do you want that? How do you look at that? How do you piece that information together to formulate a treatment plan? How do you communicate with an endodontist, with a periodontist, with a surgeon, with an orthodontist? And through cases, I show, well, this is how I did something years ago, and I didn't look at any of those things. And now here's a case I'm doing right now. Here's how I communicated with my orthodontist to get this outcome that was going to be more minimally invasive, and it's going to have a better aesthetic outcome. And so I share little things about how to do that. So that case might resonate with you, but it might not resonate with Akil, and that's all right. But it'll be one of those where it's like, okay, it may not be the whole book, but it may be a part of it to go, oh man, I like the way he communicated with his endodontist about how to decide to restore this tooth or not restore this tooth, or the periodont. So that's what it's more about. It's just giving ideas, and there will be other ways to do it. but I'm just kind of giving a bit of the insight of what I look at when I'm unraveling my brain and I'm having conversations with my patients and specialists, especially.
How do you manage that imposter syndrome? Like, how do you put it aside and
Oh,
continue writing?
I think at some point in time you got to have a little bit of confidence, and you just kind of put blinders on for a bit and you do it, but you still reach out to objective, um, close friends that you trust. And like, for instance, my friend, the prosthodontist, his name is YL. When he said, "Hey, Paresh, the way I'm reading some, like I gave him a couple of chapters and he said to me, um, the way I'm reading it, you're being a little more absolute with everything. And there are other ways to look at this. And I wouldn't agree with you on this concept in this one." And I said, "Oh, so it sounds a little more blunt." He goes, "Yeah, it does. I think you need to change that tone because it isn't an absolute. It may be an absolute in your mind because you've done it so many times, but you know, I don't really agree with that part of it." And it took me back and I go, "Okay, I realize what you're saying." And so those kind of things help me shape it to where it is today, and not be as dogmatic, but more just, hey, uh, uh, like it's not going to be for everybody, but I think it will help a lot of young dentists, um, just maybe open their eyes. Because when I'm lecturing on stuff like that, I do a lot of treatment planning and I'll show cases, and I have no problems with myself showing cases that I've done along with the specialists that I work with. And there will be specialists and restorative docs in the audience, and they'll be like, "Well, I would have done it a little different," and that's perfectly fine. As long as our diagnosis of the conditions and the problems are the same, I think you'd agree, our diagnosis of a problem list should be the same, but our treatment plans might be different.
Totally.
And they're going to be different based on our experience, what we're exposed to, the clinical judgment and skills of the specialists we work with, the skill set of the lab technician we have. All of those might be different, right? But we should have the problem list the same. And I don't think we have that all the time. I think a lot of times when we're treatment planning, everyone's like, "Oh no, this is what you do, and I know what we're going to do." And it's like, well, it's the same thing. We're just doing a bunch of veneers or we're doing a bunch of crowns. Well, no, maybe we don't do all of them. Maybe we put ortho and put the teeth in the right spot and maybe only do 2 crowns. Oh, my lab technician won't do 2 crowns. They only want to do 8. And I go, well, maybe we'll try a new lab technician. I don't know. I'm just rambling, but it's one of those things where I just think, yeah.
How did you like how do you transfer this information to everyone? Like I know you're a huge lecturer with the Seattle Study Club. Can
Yeah,
you I'm not gonna lie, and I'm almost embarrassed to say this as a dentist
yeah,
15 years out.
yeah.
What is the Seattle Study Club?
So the Seattle Study Club, it's been now this year, next week is the 30th anniversary. So the person who founded it is Michael Cohen, one of my biggest mentors and supporters. I love the guy. And he's a periodontist in Seattle, and he founded the network, and he started with the study club, and basically wanted to put together study clubs that had a curriculum without, like a university without walls, and basically nurture comprehensive interdisciplinary diagnosis and treatment. So there's about 275 roughly, could be a little more, 300 clubs around the world. And we have a pretty thriving one. We've been running, my buddy Tim and I, Tim's an orthodontist, been running a study club in Winnipeg for about 18 years. I think we've been a Seattle Study Club for 15. The symposium is unbelievable. It's one of the top symposiums around. But basically, we get together and we have a curriculum from September to May, and we meet once a month. Uh, our study club particularly usually brings in 3 full-day speakers a year, and then we do evening sessions where sometimes it's just within ourselves. A lot of times it's treatment planning sessions. So myself and Tim or some members of the club will bring a case or two and we'll present it. And ideally, we want to present it. For us, we try and present it in such a way where we present the records, and then we go through and I'll facilitate, and we'll try and get problem solving, and we have specialists in the group. So, we'll ask the periodontist, the orthodontist, endodontist, all that, questions on it. And we have discussions that way. So it's not all just clinical lectures, but a lot of treatment planning. And that's a lot of fun. And so that's what the club's about. And all the different clubs run them slightly different. Majority of them are run by periodontists and oral surgeons, like specialists. I was probably the third GP director in the network. Now there's a lot more now.
I just think it's absolutely amazing because, I live 2.5 hours from Edmonton.
Right.
My network is my other buddy dentist in town, and
Yeah.
we all know just enough not to kill the next patient.
Yeah.
But if you ask us about this advanced level of education and camaraderie and support and mentorship, it's absent from rural dentistry. And so I think this could be, a kill when you're talking to your buddies about rural versus urban dentistry. This is a huge benefit, is the camaraderie you get at a study club like this that you just aren't exposed to in a rural city.
Yeah, and it is hard. And I know there are some study clubs that are virtual and things like that. And it's good, but at the same time, there's also there's nothing better than being in the same room, sharing dinner or sharing a beer or even a coffee at breakfast and just having a conversation as well. It's so a little bit of both, but you can still have a lot of that. And that part of that's by traveling.
I just want to take a second to acknowledge, Dr. Shah, last weekend, you should have seen Neki. He was like the talk of the town at this conference. And he's been in practice for 15 years, and he just asked a question, and I was a little insecure to ask, which is what is Seattle Study Club? So I just want to take a second to shout that out, because I'm like, should I know this? Should I know this or not? I was like, wow, that's great. So like speaking of like Neki being last weekend, the guy, like you're the guy a lot of the times at a lot of these conferences, and I've done my fair share of lurking as well. How do you go from being, just a really excellent clinical dentist to the guy with all that clout? Is it just speaking engagements? Is it social media? What is it what's that secret sauce?
I don't know. I think I have confidence, but I do have, I guess, maybe not imposter syndrome, but a little bit of that. I get humbled by different things, but I think part of it is I met right people at the right time. I worked hard. I mean, one of the two people that really helped me open up doors were from Toronto and Montreal, Elliot Mechanic in Montreal and George Friedman in Toronto. And they started a group called the Canadian Academy for Aesthetic Dentistry years ago. And they had reached out to me and a number of people across the country, met in Toronto. And next thing you know, they said, "Hey, Paresh, let's get you on a couple of these programs." And they were kind enough to do that and to believe in me. And then as I did that, I started meeting people. And one of the people that I met was who's with 3M in London, and her name is Jennifer Durack, and she reached out to me one time and said, "Hey, I really like what you're doing." And I go, I don't use your products. And she goes, "Well, it doesn't matter. I just like the stuff that you do. And maybe one day you'll use some of our products." And she gave me a few opportunities, and it just kind of happened that way. And then, through that, one of my bigger turning points was, it was a 3M connection there, but another one was Chicago Midwinter. And I did a couple of table clinics. And then I wanted to get on the program, and the guy who looked after the program chair, who helps the program chair, he said, "Listen, I need someone. We need one more table clinic. Would you do it?" And I'm like, "Man, I don't want to do another table clinic. Is there a chance I could do a lecture?" He goes, "Look, I don't have control over the big lecture, but I do have control over this thing called the Windy City Lecture Series. It's a 50-minute lecture, and I got control to whoever you want. You do this table clinic for me, I'll put you in there." And I'm like, "Okay." Next thing you know, I'm in there. And I do this 50-minute lecture, and there's scouts there. And next thing you know, people saw me, and I got invited to Texas and Colorado and California, and it just kind of exploded. And then I did the same thing with Pacific Dental, and then I got, there's scouts there, and all of a sudden they saw me and said, "Hey, would you do this?" And that's how it expanded. And then Seattle Study Club was another thing. It was through a connection at 3M where I gave a lecture to their group and someone recorded it, sent it to them, and Michael Cohen invites me to not to speak because he said, "Oh, you're not ready for us." And that was humbling, but I appreciated it. And he mentored me for several years, but he got me to start the study club. And yeah. So I think part of it is all that. And the other thing is like, I don't know, trying to be as authentic and genuine as possible, trying not to be an ass and arrogant. Sometimes,
So
you know,
true.
it
So
comes
true.
out as being arrogant or something, but the bottom line is just being genuine, trying to help people. And for me, I try and help as many people and try and guide people as much as possible. I've been a little more reserved with it in the last couple of years because I found I've run into sometimes the younger dentists that they seem genuine to want to learn, but I think all they want to do is just take, and then they don't want to put the effort in. They just want to find out what to do, and I don't think you can do it that way. You've followed my buddy Adamo, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so one of the things that he's preached, and I 100% agree with, is that you're not you got to work your ass off. This doesn't just come like that. Like you got to practice, you got to work, you've got to be inspired, and you got to inspire. You got to do all of those things. I've seen him do that. He's amazing. I'm so proud of him. He's just great.
You know, I'm so curious. So we're kind of at two different points of our careers right now.
Yeah.
Like so many things still stress me out, but the things that stress me out used to be running my office, and that doesn't stress me
Yeah.
out as much anymore. And now it's
Yeah.
for me, it's always patience. And I'm always
Gotcha.
concerned. And you know, you have a patient with an infection, or you know, something doesn't go right. A patient's still in pain. You don't sleep well at night because you're always worried about it. At your stage of your career, you know, I look up to you and I see a guy who has it all figured out. And he's the guy I want to be. What stresses you out at this stage of your career?
The same thing as you. I
Yeah,
still want to make sure the patient's happy. If they're not, or there's something that doesn't go right, it's like, oh my God, what is there anything I could have done differently? And so I truly take it as a learning opportunity, that rather than going, oh my God, here's this person. Because I think it's not too difficult after a few visits to realize if it's a person that's just being over dramatic and stuff, right?
totally. Yeah,
It's just weeding out those patients and uh, but but I still go and I'll tell a patient if something isn't working. Okay, perfect example. I had a patient. He was referred to me by another dentist to do some veneers because she doesn't do a lot of veneers. And said, "Would you do that?" And it was a gentleman around in his 70s, and so I ended up delivering this case. And within the first 3 weeks, 5 of 9 units came off. Okay.
what?
And it was like, what the heck is going on? So I'm sitting here talking to him, and I'm like, man, I've been doing this for years. And
And they don't believe
and
you
I,
at that point. They're just
yeah,
like, who
no,
is
he
this
was he
guy?
was
Of course,
perfectly
of
fine. He
course.
goes, but they were all coming off at different times. And then finally I just said, okay, here's what I got. Here are all the things I have control over. Like I could have buried the lab. What happened was it was a miscommunication between myself and the lab. I had asked the lab about etching the Emacs. They didn't hear that. I don't know whose fault it was. It really doesn't matter. The bottom line is they weren't etched, they weren't treated properly. So of course they're going to debond. Okay,
Yeah.
and normally I like to do it myself. It was a miscommunication. But the bottom line, it's easy for us to just bury the lab, right? They don't know. And the lab is like thousands of miles away. It's not even in my city. But I didn't. I just said to him, look, here's the thing. Here are all the things I have control over. I did this. I did this. I could have done this. I might have done this. So I'm going to correct all of this. And then it could be the lab. And as I'm giving an example, it's just one of those things where you're eating yourself up, Neki. But the thing is, just go back and go, okay, well, what do I have control over in this situation? I had this week. I had a patient came in. It was an occlusal, which is one of the hardest things to do if you don't do it right from an adhesion point of view,
Totally.
right? Because of
Totally.
C factor.
Out of
So
control. Yeah.
and so had some sensitivity in the center of the restoration. Okay. And so I told the patient, I go, here's the situation. Been doing this for so many years. In the last 21, 22 years, I'm going to be honest with you, the number of times I've had to replace a filling in a year because it's sensitive, it's just, I can count it on one hand. It
Totally.
can
Yeah.
happen. And I said to her, I said, it could have been moisture. I used that rubber dam thingy and all it could have been just something wasn't just perfect. So here, and I don't think it's a root canal, could be a crack in the tooth, but I can't say right now. So I said, let me redo the filling for you. And if you still have those symptoms, then I'm going to send you to my endodontist and have them evaluate it.
Hmm.
And that's what I did. And you
Yeah.
know what? She still has the same symptoms. So she's going to get a second opinion. But I, so I still eat myself up on that. But I also am honest and candid. And I think patients like um, some vulnerability.
Yep.
And so I don't have a problem with that. If a person needs to hear confidence, I give it to them, but I also give them the vulnerability, like, hey, I'm not infallible, but I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good lesson, Akil, because I think coming out of school, all the new grads, they do, you just don't know what you don't know.
Hmm.
And dental school kind of gives you this false sense of confidence. And then you get
Right.
out and you're just a little too aggressive when you first graduate because you feel like you know it all already.
Right.
And then the failures happen, and I think that's a really good lesson for all new dentists is be vulnerable,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day we are human, we're not robots. We like every situation is different, and I think
Yeah.
that was important for me to hear right now too, because I think sometimes when things aren't going my way or you have a grumpy patient, you almost want to reassure them, but it's never in the right way. How do you deal with conflict and when you have
Uh,
like those grumpy patients, man?
I'm not great, but sometimes I'm a little more blunt than I should be because sometimes I get irritated by it,
I
which is
know.
not good, which is not
No,
good. And so
I hear
I
you.
kind of become defensive in some ways, not a lot, but occasionally I do. Um, but I try my best to find out and ask, well, what are those triggers? Why is it that you're so upset about this or nervous about this or apprehensive about that? And if I can find out their why, usually I can give them an answer or reassure them. And if I can't, here's the thing that I've learned because I've made those mistakes and I've also been fooled by some of my confidence over the years is the moment you're willing to pass up on doing treatment, it's liberating. It's very liberating
Yes.
because all of a sudden, if you go, look, I did all of my own surgery for out of my 31 years for probably 23 of those years. Everything, every distoangular and horizontal, you name it. I did it all. I did IV sedations and all that. I don't enjoy it anymore. So if you came to me and you had a mesioangular, I'd be saying, Neki, look, I did this for so many years, but now to get this tooth out, I'm going to probably spend an hour. I can send you to my friend down the street. He'll have that tooth out in 10 minutes because he does 20 of those a day.
Yeah.
He may do 50 of them or 100 in a week. And so I'm just not going to do it.
You never lose sleep over treatment you don't do,
Right.
right? Yeah.
And so it's one of those where, yeah, there's sometimes I know they're going to go somewhere else to get, that crown or those veneers or whatever it is. But yeah, but I know because I've already gone down paths where it's like, and they're not happy. And the next thing you know, they go somewhere else. And because that happens, it happens to me too. And it's not fun then. So
I
Speaking
think it's funny.
factors that are,
We're
oh, go ahead.
sorry. We're at two different stages in our career, man. Like,
yeah,
if you gave me a 4-6 crown to do, I would
yeah,
sweat. I don't ever. I'm just not. Crown and bridge is not my thing, man. And
yeah.
I see all your posts, and I'm like, man, this guy's legit. How do these dentists, deal with that? I find that so stressful. So, it's kind of reassuring. We have our things that we're more comfortable with, and we don't have to do everything in our career.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
I get anxiety doing endo, and I don't. It's just like seriously, it's just not
Yeah.
something that I do. My patient's like, "What?" He goes, "Listen, after this many years, you want to see someone who can do it and get it done right away. Like you don't want to see me three times." Oh no, I don't. So, and it's not hard for me. Like it would be hard when you're in a smaller town to tell them, "Hey, you got to drive to Edmonton to see this oral
Totally.
maxillofacial surgeon." I get that, but I'm sure like if you're confident enough, the patient trusts you, they'll drive that 2.5 hours to get that endo done.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
For
I hear
sure.
that.
yeah.
Speaking of factors that are in your control, you brushed over something that was pretty interesting before we hit the record button. You said you started at the ripe age of 50 by buying a practice or buying a building.
Oh,
Um,
59.
59. Okay. I was being nice. I didn't want to overshoot it. But so why don't
No,
you talk about
no.
that experience a
So
bit?
I'm 61 now, dude. It's
Dude, you look great.
so
You look good.
thanks. Thank you. You know, I have to keep up with my wife and um she's like she works out every day. So this is my 22 days in a row that I've done Peloton or a workout with a trainer. So I'm like
Good
Dental
for
I'm
you.
Sweat
on a
Club,
roll.
right? Dental Sweat Club.
Yeah, Dental Sweat Club. So it's around I'm 58. I'm driving, and all of a sudden I see this building like 4 blocks away, and I go to my wife. Oh, I think, man, there's a building finally. I'm always looking for something. And then she's like, "Okay, but you're lecturing, you're traveling, you're doing this. Like, how many things you're going to do? You're going to give something up?" I'm sure. And I'm not actually cutting back on the travel lectures. I've got a few more left, um, but we did it. She said, like, you still want to practice? I go, yeah, I love what I do. I don't want to be doing 20 days a month, but I want to still do it. I'd like to do another 8 to 10 years. And that was like 3 years ago. So we bought the building, we built it over COVID, uh, built a dream practice. I love it. And yeah, so we moved in like April of 2021. And I am the happiest I've been. And I've also changed up my team. I only have one person that's been with me um, with that transition. I uh, got a new team, and
Was
it's
that
been
intentional?
amazing. Uh, yeah, yeah. I just designed a vision, core values. Had someone help me. She's a consultant, a management coach from who Jerry Gottlieb from um, Palm Springs. She was in Seattle at that time. Her husband is a periodontist that's retired and a friend and a mentor. And she helped me, present a brand new set of strategic anchors and core values to the team. And a couple of people said, "Hey, this isn't for me," which is perfectly fine. So they left. And then as COVID hit, it was one of those where everyone's off, and I realized at home, like, oh my God, like, what if some of these people don't even want to come back to dentistry? And my wife's like, well, so what? Like, you start from scratch. You just need one assistant, and you just start working.
And you go.
And then, so next thing you know, I'm like, well, I don't want a few people here. I think I'm going to invite them to find somewhere else. And I did. And then we started looking, and I assembled an amazing team, and I love them. And I love going to work now. I love going to work. And I didn't feel like that for probably a good 6, 7 years. How would you like to drive to your own business and go, oh my God, I don't really want to work with this person?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. But
Yeah,
what's different? Like, what
the
is
culture. We're all
okay?
like everyone. Like one of the things, one of our strategic anchors, or like our core values. One of them is uh, putting the team ahead. It's so easy to say. But Jerry had got me to go, well, what does that look like if it's working? Well, that means that no one says, I don't want to do it or it's not my job. She's like, well, there you go. That's what teamwork's about. You just don't want anyone to say, that's not my job. You just want people. The same thing about leadership. She said, well, everyone has leadership. And she's like, yeah, but what does it look like? What does leadership look like when it's being acted upon? And I'm like, well, that means that something needs to be done. And anyone just steps up to go, here, let me figure this out. I'll take that. And she goes, well, what does it look like when you doesn't work? And I go, well, people are going to go, well, that's not my job. I don't want to do that. And I go, exactly. She said, so let's present it that way, and let's have people start leveling up. And we have,
Interesting.
and this group is amazing. I have an administrator who fell on some ice in April, had a concussion, missed 6 months. The
Oh,
team, about three hygienists, the two assistants, and the other admin, my manager just said, We are not hiring anyone to replace her. We are all going to learn her role and we're all going to take turns helping. I'm like, all right.
That's culture
Even the
working.
hygienist learned how to take payments, schedule appointments.
Really?
Both the
Wow.
assistants learned how to do the day end. They struggled, they panicked with it, but they did it because they said, no, we don't want you to replace her. We will hold the position for her. Was it stressful? Yeah, it was stressful.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's what I've got as a team right now. And I got a team that actually cares for me and has my back. Like they actually do. When they come to me and they go, "You look a little stressed out," I go, "Well, I kind of am. This is bothering me and that, and I got a couple of things going on outside." And they go, "Okay, well, we got you. What do you need?" And I go, "Well, can you just take care of this?" And I'm still accountability is important. I am still, as Patrick Lencioni says, who's an author that's written some amazing books. I'm still the chief reminding officer, the CRO. So I will still go and remind them, hey, listen, we were supposed to do this. Like, what are we doing? But it's they respect it and appreciate it, but they give it back to me too. Like if I miss something and they go, oh, Paresh, you must not have used your checklist because you missed 2 charts yesterday. Can you please fill them out? I'm like, ooh, sorry.
My bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah.
Now,
Goes both ways.
at work, I have a team of 32 people, and that is
crazy.
Quite stressful. Quite stressful.
Yeah.
My biggest pet peeve is when and this is 100% personal, but like I feel like I'll give my all at something, or I'll give, my group gifts or something like that, and people don't say thank you. That is my personal, like, for everything in life. What, like, when you're running your team, what is your pet peeve? Like, what, just like, you just bite your tongue and you're like, for real?
Okay, I don't have that issue anymore. That's what I had for years. And because they just felt, I think they just felt it was just an expectation. And, and yeah, it bothered me a lot. My pet peeve is, I'm a huge checklist person, checklist manifesto.
Ooh, yeah.
And for me, so it's all about accountability. And that drives me nuts because I don't want, we have certain systems in place. And for me, I don't, unless it's completely ingrained, I want people to use that because we're in a profession and we work in such a way that it's, in my opinion, I think it's impossible to have every one of those things dialed in all the time. I don't, I always say this, like, I don't need you to come in the morning stressing out that you forgot to put toilet paper in the patient washroom. That's a checklist thing. Like you should be coming in just going, look, I'm ready for the day. I'm ready for the team and my patients. Not that I forget that because someone's going to get upset with me or the patient's going to get upset. And so I think that's my biggest one is the consistency of using that. That drives me nuts.
That's a really good point. Do you use checklists, Akhil?
I'm actually looking at my long checklist in front of me, so I do. I use it for almost everything.
Yeah.
Man, this poor kid's in school. He's probably got an exam tomorrow, and here we are talking.
I had one today, and I have oral surgery on Friday. So we squeeze it in right in between. But in a climate that, in a lot of ways, HR and good talent is scarce. At least in Ontario, it is, like, for at least hygienists and assistants. How did you really swallow that pill of, obviously with the joint decision between you and your practice consultant? How did you swallow that pill of, hey, we might need to do a full restructuring? Like, that's no.
You know what? I just wasn't. I wasn't happy, it was tough. And there were times where I didn't have someone, and there were times where I had to come in and phone patients, and do scheduling. I did it. I don't mind answering phone. I have no problem doing it. Do I want to? No, but you just have to do things, and that also meant some of my, the key people that were with me were filling in very uncomfortable roles for weeks or even a few months to try and help me with things like that. But I just said, no, this is what we're going to do. I just want to be happy. I want to find the right people, and I think in some ways COVID helped because I was able to slow things down and realize that, hey, like we can just rebuild it slowly. It was tough. We had a really tough year when I went through that because I was short one whole administrator, and everyone was trying to pick up. Everyone was uncomfortable, but they saw a difference in me. They saw less stress with me. The stress was more like, hey, crap, we're short a person, but they saw less stress with me because whoever was along were happy, and we got along, and we all helped one another unconditionally. And
Which
so that
easier
made
said
life
than done.
right. That made it, and it's easier when you only have like 8 or 9 of us total than 33 of you, right?
Yeah.
But that's what it is about leading by example, having everyone just go, okay, let's do the extra mile. And the one thing that for me, Nikhil, is I'm the first one in, and I'm usually the last one out, and I'm the oldest guy, and but it's my practice, it's my business. So I'm always in around 7:15 in the morning before anyone. The lane comes in a few minutes after. We kind of have our little time where we talk about family and other things, and then everyone else comes in. We have more, all of that stuff. But it was hard. It really was. I lost a couple of assistants recently, and just rehired some. And when I hired them, I didn't hire for roles or experience. So one is a new grad, one has 9 years experience. But my ad was all about our core values and how our team works. And so one of them actually wasn't looking, but then she saw the ad and called Elaine and said, listen, I noticed your ad has nothing to do with about the position. It says, an dental assistant, but it's all about your team. And she's like, yeah, because if you can't get along with the team, we're not going to
It's
hire
not
you.
going to work. No.
And so she said, well, I'd like to meet your team. And she actually did a day. And like I got a team now that the hygienist will do instruments and sterilize.
That's
That
phenomenal.
I have assistants that'll go and help the hygienist or help the admin. I'll have admin that'll come and sweep the floor or go in and help clean up a hygiene room because someone is running behind. And no one asks. They just do it. It's really refreshing.
That's awesome. I totally hear you. I love my team too, because everyone tries to pitch in where they can, but
Yeah.
practice is busy. You said, you wanted to work here for another 8 to 10 years, and
Yeah.
that's, what is post dentistry life look like to you? Do you still want to practice part-time? What's your exit?
I don't know. That's a good question because when we had COVID, we start realizing, and then, as our parents are getting older and they've got health issues, we're starting to realize we want to spend more time and enjoying and making those memories. So I already told my wife about 6, 7 months ago and her daughter, like, hey, I want to, we got to carve out more time to just vacation and travel because we love doing that. But I still love the patient interaction. So I see myself on a decline where I want to just slow down, but I still want to be part of some of this. I'm not ready to exit completely, but I can see myself progressively to dropping. But I don't know how long that'll be. Will it be 5 years? Will it be 7 years? I can't tell you right now. As long as I'm healthy, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. But I just don't want to be at the pace that I'm at, and I want to do a lot of travel. I just love traveling. We love doing that. And now our daughter and her husband live in New York. We got to definitely spend more time going out there. Yeah.
I totally hear that.
Yeah.
I was reading a book. Hoi Young told me about our last guest, and it's the 4,000 weeks. We have 4,000 weeks in our
Okay.
lifetime.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was basically saying time. I always used to say, money isn't the biggest commodity for me, it's time. But then this book goes on and says, no, it's health, because health is what will keep you going. You can
Yeah, and
be
I think
90 years old and unhealthy and
that's a
just
good
stuck
point.
to a bed. Yeah.
Well, that's what happened because I'm sitting with my parents in their mid to late 80s, my mother-in-law in her mid to late 80s, and they can't travel anymore, and they
That's right.
miss going on our family vacations to, Mexico and Jamaica and Dominican and going to India and all that. And that's why I told my family, I said, oh man, we got to just start doing it while we're healthy, and we got to stay healthy. And so, yeah, I agree with you. It's a combination of all that for sure. Absolutely.
See,
That's
Yeah.
why
this
you
is
got,
good news for you, Akil, man. This is good.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Nike's pulling my leg. But that's why you got a 20-day streak in Peloton. So it looks like you're on your way
Yeah, I
there.
got to keep going, man. I got to keep going.
Got
It's
to get that
hard
to 200.
waking up early. I know. Been
Do
waking
you,
up like at 5:15 in the morning now.
mm,
It's really different.
do you
Really
find that
different.
hard to like wake up that early and then go to work, or do you find it
No,
easier
you know
than the
what? I've been
evening?
fine, but I've been trying to sleep a little bit earlier. It's hard when you're watching hockey games and you're watching
Yeah.
football and all that stuff, but I'm trying to recondition myself. And I get up early anyway now, so I don't mind getting up early. But yeah, I'm enjoying that time, and as long as I can get, I just know now I can't get up by on 5 or 5.5 hours sleep. I need at least 7. It's just the way I am now. So yeah. And honestly, as recently as 2, 3 years ago, I was still going on 5 hours. I just can't do it anymore.
Damn.
It's not fun.
There's no way no way I could do that. But
Yeah.
honestly, Dr. Shah, Paresh, thank you so much for joining us. It's an
Oh
honor
man.
to talk to you, to meet you.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't
been
wait to
fun.
meet you in person one day. And
Yeah, it would be fantastic. I hope I can meet both of you.
yeah, I have a lot to learn.
Soon.
Seattle Study Club, you better watch out. I'm coming.
Yeah,
I'm not so
absolutely.
good at my restorative, but we all got to start somewhere, and I feel like I'm ready. So let's jump in. I'm in.
Awesome.
And look
Anytime
out
you
for the
come
new
to
book.
Winnipeg. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks so
Awesome.
much for
Hey,
coming on the
listen,
pod.
thanks, guys. Reach out anytime if you need anything. You got my number. And Keel, if you need any help, by all means, okay?
I'll be knocking.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
All
so
the
much.
best with this, okay? If you need any help, let me know. Take
See you
care.
later. Thank you so much.
Bye.
So how'd you think that went, man?
Man, I really enjoyed it. And honestly, I've been looking up to this guy for a long time. I've followed him on Instagram, seems like since I joined Instagram. And he's just been like, he's a super popular name in Canada. And like, I know he's been lecturing a ton. So it's kind of cool to talk to a guy and that lectures a ton and hear his day to day and how he got to where he is.
When you looked up to someone for that long, did expectations live up to reality? Or
Oh, totally, man. Totally. Cause it's interesting because you see people's stories and you see him on his Peloton, or you'll see him, lecturing, or he's talking about a clinical subject. And it's just cool to see someone at that stage of their career have more passion now more than ever. And I think that's inspiring because I think it's the opposite for 95% of clinicians out there is as they hit their tail end of their career. Not saying that Paresh is at his tail end at all, but you're going in, you're the last one in the office and the first one out, and the passion just isn't as vibrant as it used to be.
yeah, speaking of the tail end, you teed it up pretty nicely for Sage.
Sorry, man. I don't know why you didn't take it, man. It was a good opportunity for you.
It was there for the take. I just figured it'd be like a 10-minute monologue of me explaining, all of our offerings. But I mean, super applicable because a guy like that, as that, like that story is not uncommon where people don't want to just cold turkey quit dentistry. A lot of them want to sort of taper off and maybe pass on some responsibility to either an associate or a new owner and kind of take the executive chairman role rather than the exiting dentist. So it's interesting that that's what he wanted as well.
Yeah, and like how crazy is it? Like you're just going to open up a brand new practice and you only have one staff member that comes with you and you basically start from scratch. And at 59 years old, that's to me, that's nuts. Like I'm 38 years old. And if I had to, lose even 3 staff members, I'd be freaking out, man. I wouldn't even know what to do. So good for him for just reinventing his wheel and going from there.
At 59 too.
At
like
59.
Good
yeah.
for him for prioritizing his happiness, eh?
Oh, I like it's unbelievable. I would just take more vacation days. And,
yeah. I just need to be able to bear with them for longer rather than
right?
reinvent the wheel.
5 more years, 5 more years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but like it's crazy because like when I make a course, I know how long it takes to make a course, yet alone, like he's wrote a textbook and he said that took 2 years. It takes a long time. I can't even imagine. Like I asked him, like, do you just pull up your laptop and just open up a Word document and start? Like that just must be so difficult, even like finding out where to start and how to put it all together. But I think, he wasn't as excited about the textbook dropping because I think it's the journey that is the most exciting part. And when you have that final end goal and you have that product in front of you, you're like, okay, that's cool. But then you look back on how hard it was to make it. And I think that's where a guy like Paresh gets a lot of the satisfaction, is the journey or the actual process of making it rather than just the end result. So I had a lot of respect for that too.
Is that how you kind of felt with your own course? Like, did you like
Oh,
the journey? Like, was that the gratifying part?
totally. And like that's the whole reason I started making like the course I'm making right now is when I first made when I first made third molars online, I was just looking at the result, be like, man, I got to get through this. And like, man, I want it to be awesome. How am I going to get through this? And then looking back when it was done, I was like, those were amazing times. Like where I would come home and work for like 7 hours trying to make the perfect video. Do you know what I mean? And that's my passion. And once I realized I loved the journey more than, I loved the final result, I just wanted to keep on making stuff. And so I was always like, I still every night I'll come home and like I'll chip away at a video, or if I can't sleep at 4 a.m, like I'll pull out my laptop and just start messing around and come up with ideas, or I'm always brainstorming. So that for me, it's the journey. That's the most important part, man.
You know Jay Shetty, yeah?
Oh, come on, man. I wish we were homies, but yeah, I listened to every single episode, man. I love it.
So like I just finished this book, I think like a month. I can't believe it took me
Yeah.
this long to listen to it. But in the book, he talks about like dharma, right? Like it's kind of like your purpose or your calling, right?
Yeah.
And there's this one story where he says there's a young monk and he goes up to, the master or whatever it's called, and he goes up to him and he says, I heard it's 10 years to reach my dharma. And he said, yeah, you think so? And he goes, yeah. And like the teacher goes, well, for you, because you want it so bad, it's going to take 20. So it's like in a way, it's kind of like that same parallel, right? If you want it, it's almost like if you want it too bad, if you're focused on the metrics too much, if you're like just wanting to get that book out, or wanting to get it on shelves, like it kind of it sort of, one, it shows, but two, it it doesn't lead to as gratifying as of a feeling, because that's one moment in time versus the process is like 99.9% of it.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, I bet you he obsessed over a page, and then now it's put together, he's just like, yeah, I don't even know where to buy it. He's like, yeah, I'll send you a copy.
Didn't you get that same vibe though? Like for him, it was like, yeah, it was just this, took 2.5 years to make. And I don't know, man, I that was probably one of the most respected things I thought about him is, I want to take the time to pass on my knowledge to the next generation. And this textbook is going to be the way that I'm going to do that. So huge respect for him.
You got a textbook in the pipeline?
Dude, I already wrote a textbook chapter when I was in dental school. Yeah. I was
You're kidding.
Yeah, I got a scholarship. So I went to University of Saskatchewan, and between my first and second year, I applied for a scholarship and I actually got accepted to go to McGill for 4 months and work in a public health dentistry office. And I wrote a textbook chapter and like 3 articles on the economics of dental caries. And I look
awesome.
back, I have this book like buried. It's like sitting underneath something, like propping it up. And every time I walk by it, I was like, yeah, I did that. But like, it's crap, because in first year, what the hell do you really know, right?
Wait, you're just gonna leave it there? What are the economics of dental caries?
It costs a lot to fix.
Yeah, exactly. In conclusion, furthermore.
Yeah. No, it was super fun. And that's where, like, I lived in Montreal for 4 months, and I was still, still young, and it was a lot of fun. I remember just riding the trains all the time, and it was fun times, man. I liked it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even in that case, it's a cool. I feel like when it's no diss to the economics of carries, but like, I mean, like that's I hope that's not your life's work. I hope that's not the plateau. But I feel like when it's the culmination of your life's work, in probably that case, it was probably the destination. You're like, God, yes, I have a publication. But in his case, it's probably the journey, I would
Oh,
assume.
totally, totally. And I don't know. It's cool. His daughter is a periodontist. Um, I thought his story of how he got into dentistry was quite funny. My dad filled out my application.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that at all. Usually, we all have a story like, we got a smile, so we wanted to repay our smiles, and this dude's dad just filled out his application. But look where he is, man. He's a titan in our industry, especially in Canada, and he continues to put Canadian lecturers and speakers on the map. So kudos to Paresh.
And we didn't even get into, like, I'm just looking at some of our questions, like huge social media following, like
Yeah.
massively forward thinking dental practice with like all this digital dentistry, all this tech. Like we didn't even get to that,
No.
which is kind of funny. We probably covered one third. We got to get him back on and talk about those things, because that alone makes him stand out, right? Like I feel like in this day and age, everyone thinks they need to have like social media clout, or like they need to be like a TikTok star. But I mean, he seems like without very much effort at all, he's gone to like 20K followers just from being on the speaking circuit and just doing good dentistry. So I really wanted to ask him about that, because that's super interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like it's not
Oh.
like he posts like shirtless photos like of him on a Peloton, right? So
Does that work? I'll start working out. Yeah.
not for me, maybe for some. No one wants to see that.
I love it.
Cool. Anything else, man?
No, man, it's a cool episode, and you're totally right. I need to ask him about this digital dentistry, because I can't even get a model to stick to my build plate when I'm making 3D or using the 3D printer. So I could use a hand.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I don't even know what that means, but I'm sure that's I'm sure that's tough. Good stuff, man.
All right,
Oh,
man.
big shout out. That one
No.
question you asked about like what is Seattle Study Club? And I'm like, I'm looking at the notes. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to ask it because I look like the biggest idiot. I'm like Googling it. I'm like looking at his website. I was like, there's nothing here. And then you ask it, I'm like, oh, thank you. Thanks, man. I appreciate
I've always
that
heard of
one.
it, and I don't think I've never been to a meeting before, but I've always heard of it, but I had no idea what they do there. It seems like a secret society that you have to do like 50 veneer cases before they let you in or something like that. I have no idea, man. So I'm glad it's changing, and it's allowing more GPs in, but I like the interdisciplinary camaraderie amongst the different disciplines in dentistry. So it sounds like a cool option if you want to improve your clinical skills.
Yeah, sounds sweet. And I'm glad you were the one that asked the question. I don't have to do it. Well, cool guys. Hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll catch you